I'm kind of fresh off this near-death experience, but I'm having
Yeah.
a real positive relationship with it where I'm like, man, I feel good. Like, get busy living or get busy dying. Like, I'm excited that I've seen this. You know?
The first question I wanted to ask you is, feel free to just kind of tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I am originally from Marietta, Georgia,
Okay.
which is about 30 minutes north of Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so grew up there. Uh, Jewish family, 100% in the South, which was
In
fun.
Georgia?
In Georgia, which was a little weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, just grew up there. Always was into like performing, but never did it really formally at all. Always kind of tried to play sports, but was never really good at anything. And then I got to high school, and I had a Spanish teacher who was also the coach of the debate team, the speech and debate team. And
Yes.
so he kind of recruited me to be on the speech and debate team, which really kind of opened up a lot of doors and opportunities, and just my imagination in terms of like kind of, because there's two different sides of forensics speech and debate. There's like the argumentative debate side, and then there's like a performing speech side.
HIDI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and that was, that was really fun. I was doing pretty well at both the debating and the HI and duo type stuff. And then my senior year of high school, we were on our way to a debate tournament, and we had parent chaperones that would volunteer to drive us. And while we were on our way, we got into a pretty bad car accident.
Oh,
and
no.
It was pretty bad. Car flipped down
Whoa.
the highway a few times.
Oh.
There were some injuries, but no one died.
Wow.
All right. But kind of rocked my world a little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely changed my worldview. And yeah, I was injured pretty bad in the car accident, but I injured my hand. So I had to have a few surgeries and was kind of sidelined. But then, that happened my senior year of high school. So a year later, I'm going to the College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina. And I'm kind of fresh off this near-death experience, but I'm having a real positive relationship with it where I'm like, man, I feel good. Like, get busy living or get busy dying. Like, I'm excited that I've seen this, And so there wasn't really much of a debate team or outlet, at Charleston. And so I'd always kind of been funny at the lunch table and always kind of wanted to pursue comedy. So I decided to call the local improv theater in town and say, hey, do you guys do stand-up? And they were like, you know what? We don't actually do too much stand-up here. We do some, but there is a guy in town that runs a bunch of local open mics. You should hit him up. His name is Dusty Slay. And
I know that name.
You should link up with him. So I, as a freshman in college in Charleston, South Carolina, start doing comedy. And that's kind of where the journey began.
Why? That is not where I saw that story going. I thought you were going to say one of the parents like dropped you off at an open mic or something like that.
Yeah, I know, right?
love asking comedians why they got started in comedy or how they got started in comedy, because the story is always different. I've never heard the same story twice, but yours takes the cake for sure. I've never heard somebody be like, well, I almost died in a debate accident. Wow.
Yeah, so you got the hand that's been, reconstructed,
Wow.
But yeah, and so then I started doing comedy as a college student, and I was very aggressive, and there were some very good
a debater, aggressive? No way.
Yeah, and there were some very good comics in town at the time, and we all kind of really worked together to build a scene, and one of my goals, was to really, I wanted the comedy scene to be, the stand-up comedy scene to be respected among like the local music and arts community. Because I was going to college there, And all my friends were in these bands, and they were all doing shows and making songs, and they all looked so cool. And then I had friends that were like that were like visual artists, and they were all doing stuff. And then I had friends that were poets, and they were doing stuff. And my friends that were this, and they were doing stuff. And I was like, well, and then, they were all doing it together. They would have these big festivals, and the stand-up comedy scene just wasn't being included in those things. And so I kind of made it my goal, to really put the stand-up comedy scene in a position to where, we're getting good opportunities, right? Like as comedians, you can only do so well at dive bar open mics for so long.
Right. You hit the ceiling at some point.
You need showcases to determine if those jokes actually work for, spectators of art, and so that was always one of the goals. And, we were definitely able to do that. By the time I left Charleston, comedy scene was booming. Awesome. We were in the music and art scene and being included in a lot of the festivals. And, a lot of the guys that I started with in Charleston at that time, there was something in the water. A lot of people have gone on to be pretty successful.
That's awesome. I wonder if it's that drive to have to create it yourself, right? I feel like if you start in a scene like New York, where there's just opportunities are just all over the place, and you can just throw a coin and hit an open mic somewhere and go. I feel like the motivation isn't necessarily there the same as if you built something with your bare hands and it wouldn't exist if it weren't for you, and you're not just going to let it go. I feel like it's easy to skip an open mic when you're tired if somebody else is putting on that open mic. But if you're the one who built it, or if it's a showcase that you built, you're the only one, you can't skip a night. You have to go. You have to be a part of it. Oh, that's so wild. That's so interesting. Also debater, forensics nerd as well. So that's awesome.
There we go. Public Forum, Lincoln Douglas. What were we doing?
IPDA.
Okay, there we go.
Yep. Did you ever go and debate after college? Did you ever go back as a pro?
No, I didn't, but recently I have judged some tournaments virtually, which was very weird for me.
Super weird. Yeah, I went back and debated pro like 2 or 3 years after I graduated college, and I just I couldn't make myself care enough. I was like, this used to matter so much. I think that's what weed does to a person though. Mm-hmm. So how long did you stay in Charleston?
So I was in Charleston for, 4 years. I was there just for college. And
wow.
I was there for just 4 years. And then after and it's funny because right at the end of like college was when things were taken off locally, right. And that doesn't mean they're taken off, but things were taken off locally in the sense that the city paper was finally kind of covering what I was up to. Shows were getting easier to procure,
awesome.
And then right after that, I went to New York.
Wow. What was that like?
So New York was cool. I went to New York and I got there in like 2013 of September.
Did you move there or did you just like visit to do some shows?
I moved there. I decided I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't have anything lined up. I just had some money saved up and I was like, I'm going to get to New York. I'm going to give myself like 3 to 4 months to really find a job. And then I'll be able to like, at most, I ended up finding a job within like a week or two that ended up being horrible, but it paid me money for a couple of months. And then I ended up finding a really great job I got my degree in college in communications, media communications. And so when I got to New York, I ended up getting a job at one of the top corporate crisis PR firms.
Wow.
That does crisis PR and mergers and acquisitions and
wow.
IPOs and a lot of financial stuff. And I got a job there as their receptionist. So I was the first person that these people would see in the morning, every day.
Oh, God.
And these people were doing these big, big corporate projects, like big, like,
millions of dollars.
Millions, billions. I mean, like lots and lots of money. And I got my degree in communication. So there was a piece of me that was like, I need to like do something with this. Right. Like, you know, and part of me in comedy is it's like I moved to New York with the intentions of finding a good day job where I could learn, I could grow, I could meet people.
Right.
And I'm not gonna lie, while I was in New York for those first few years working for that company, I really enjoyed working for the company. I enjoyed what I was learning.
Yeah.
The work that we were doing was having global impact. So it was like kind of addicting. So I didn't do comedy as much. I definitely like continued to do mics as much as I can, but you know, people move to these scenes to hang out at the clubs every night and to do 10 mics a night. And I definitely just didn't treat it that way.
Right.
I got there, kind of got this job and really kind of made that my priority for about 3 to 4 years. Still did comedy, still went hang out with my friends that were doing it. I took improv classes at Second City in Chicago, actually, and in UCB in New York. And so I was still doing stuff, but, you know, it's expensive to live in New York. And so you find a company like I was at that, I mean, I was getting, it was a British company. So I was getting like 5 weeks paid vacation, like 401k, they would match the 401k. Like all these perks and all these benefits and stuff. So it's hard to be like, well, let me go to the mic, you know?
Right.
And they're like, you know, so I did that. And then I got a little antsy right around like 2017. I was starting to get antsy. And every summer I would still kind of go and do like a week-long comedy tour with like my buddies from Charleston. One of which is Dusty Slay. Again, I mentioned him earlier. He's a Nashville comic.
I was going to say, I definitely know that name for sure.
I mean, he's a Nashville comedian. It was just announced today that he is going to get a 30-minute Netflix special at the end of the year.
That's awesome.
Super exciting. And then Derek Humphrey, very funny New York comic, started in Charleston. And then, you know, another guy, Vince Fabra. So we were doing all of these tours and stuff. We would do them, you know, kind of once a year. And then, you know, I was getting antsy. I started applying for a bunch of jobs, and you know, there's all this pressure to like find a job that's in the industry, right? Like everyone wants to feel like they're not like going to work, right? So
Everybody.
That's why people try and like work at BuzzFeed or work at this, you know, because they're like they think it's going to be fun when really it kills you once you're there. But
never make your hobby your job.
So I ended up finding a job posting on LinkedIn for a field reporter at TMZ. And so I just decided to quit. I was like, you know what? One of my goals in comedy, like one of my ultimate goals is to be a late night host.
Yes.
Right? Some people want to be headliners.
Right.
Some people want to be feature acts. Some people want to be television show writers. You know, like I want to be a late night host.
Yes, that would be the greatest.
Like and so part of me thinking like, so I end up getting hit up by TMZ. They interview me for the field reporter job. They offer me the job. So now I have to decide, am I about to leave this corporate situation that I'm in? Benefits, perks, we're working on massive projects with global implications. You know, my office was on Park Avenue.
Wow.
In New York, like again, like a whole world I never really saw myself in, to go be a paparazzi, which I was more than a paparazzi. I'm not going to lie, like tons of, you know, but that was the dilemma. And TMZ wasn't offering great benefits. You know, I was kind of taking a pay cut, to be honest. But I'm like, but they're giving me a license to talk to celebrities on TV. Like, so I quit my job and I flew out to LA for training with TMZ.
That's wild.
And I'm not even there 2 hours before they give me a camera, and I'm out in the field in Beverly Hills trying to interview Helen Mirren, Adam Sandler, all in the same like hour.
Wow.
And none of that went well. But like, you know, so then I started my journey with TMZ as a field reporter.
That's crazy.
And that was a wild time.
This whole story is a wild time. Like your whole life is a wild time. I was not expecting this at all.
I'll keep going with the TMZ stuff. So I go out there, and the goal is for them to train me in LA to have a camera, walk around, find celebrities, interview them. But the goal is then for me to go back to New York with this skill set and do it there. So I go back to New York and I'm hustling. I'm working like 11 and a half, 12-hour days. I'm walking around the city with a backpack with camera gear, batteries, water bottles, cords, computers, just huffing it, just trying to produce content. And I'm not going to really get into the weeds about how we do that, but it was just exhausting, and I'm trying to do it. And I'm finding that I don't have the energy to do stand-up.
I was going to say, that sounds like the opposite of conducive to comedy.
I'm exhausted. But one of the ideas that I had in my mind was, well, there've been a few guys that go out there with a video camera. And instead of just sending the footage back to LA, they get to go on the TV show and say, hey, this is who I just talked to. This is what they get to pitch their own video. So I had been at TMZ maybe 3 months, and I just very boldly called my, the guy I was reporting to, and I said, listen, I'm exhausted out here. I'm wiped. I'm like, I don't know how long I can do this without there being some sort of real, like I'm a pop, like I went from like this, to like being paparazzi. I'm like, so I was given the opportunity where they said, if you get a clip that you think is good enough, we'll let you come on the show and pitch it. Well, 2 days later, I'm at the JFK airport. Bryan Cranston walks out, and we pop off like a great conversation. Basically, I got him to say that I was a handsome Jew and that he would love for me to date his daughter if she was open to it. Silliness, but I got to pitch that on TMZ. The segment was pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
And from that moment, Harvey said, you can pitch on the show whenever you want.
Wow.
Me being at TMZ for 3 months.
Wow.
So I went from being in the corporate gig, doing that, to 3 months later, like I'm calling my mom being like, Mom, I'm going to be on Fox tonight. Like I'm talking to Bryan Cranston.
Wow.
He calls me a handsome Jew. So I do that job. I do that job for about a year and a half, and I kind of bounce around. Like I said, I'm originally from Atlanta. So at one point during the winter time, when it gets really cold in New York, I volunteered to go down to Atlanta to try and get a bunch of content. This was definitely during the rise of like Atlanta hip hop.
I was going to say, Atlanta's like the scene.
Migos and the Babies and the Lil Babies and, the big babies. I don't know.
All the babies.
But, and there's a lot of, stuff going on there. So I went down to Atlanta to do the job. And then, I got to a point where I was just, and I got some great content with TMZ. I got some great interviews. I got to interview Jon Stewart, Steven Tyler, Mark Cuban, Kevin Hart, even some weirdos like Milo Yiannopoulos and Tommy Lahren, I got to talk to like a whole Jimmy Fallon, Whoopi Goldberg, bunch of athletes, got to just talk to a whole wide range of people, Bill Clinton. But I just got exhausted with running around. And so I told them I was just I couldn't, I was having a hard time with it. And then they basically said, well, we have a opening on the news desk in Los Angeles where basically you would come in and you would be a news reporter on the show, but you would also be like a news reporter from headquarters. Like you're not just a TV reporter, like you are a reporter. But instead of getting your content with a video and interviewing people, you're going to be making calls. You're going to be, getting stories, And so I had always kind of made a deal with myself where I said I never wanted to go to LA and just figure it out.
Yeah.
And just get there and be like, I'll figure it out. I always said I'll never move to LA unless someone is offering me a job on TV.
Right.
And then that's kind of what was happening. So I took that job and I moved to LA.
How old were you at this point?
At this point, so this would have been So I got the job with TMZ when I was, I want to say 25, 26. I'm now moving out there at 28. I move out there in November of 2018. I worked for them for a year as a news reporter in the office. I'm on the TV show pretty regularly. I'm reporting on TMZ Live. And while I'm out in LA, I am aggressively pursuing stand-up at night. I'm
That's
like
awesome.
hitting the mics at like the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store. I'm going down to Long Beach. I'm going up to Santa Clarita. I'm going down to San Diego. Like I'm trying to hit all the mics. I got to perform at the Comedy Store in the original room about 5 times. And every single time was like magical, like hard to explain magical.
That's awesome.
And so I'm doing all that. Worked for them for about a year in that position, in that role. And then right around November of 2019, I left. And it was at that moment I kind of decided, like, I don't just want to be on TV. Like, I don't just want to do a job in the industry to say I'm in the industry,
right,
or to say like I have this job. Like, I had a really hard time at TMZ for a lot of reasons. One was I feel like I'm a nice guy with empathy, and I feel like a lot of things were projected onto me because I was employed by TMZ. Also, just in that office, trying to keep my integrity. And
I can definitely see how TMZ would kind of put a label on you.
And then try and operate with integrity. And, so all of the hurdles that I was facing, both outside of the office and then even inside of the office, I kind of, and in that moment, I was out in LA and I was doing a lot of stand up, and I had people coming up to me being like I would do the Comedy Store, and I would have people coming up to me being like, you had the set of the night. And I'd be like, this is a Friday night in the original room at the Comedy Store. And I know that like I was doing the time slot from like 8 to 10:30, and I know all the headliners and stuff going from like 10:30 to 2. But from that like 8 to 10:30 slot, I was getting like this really great feedback. And so it was at that moment I decided I'm going to go do comedy. I am no longer just going to try and chase a gig or to feel relevant or whatever. Like, I'm also not going to go work at a PR firm just to like feel, just for, I'm very blessed right now to be in a position where I have a day job where I work remotely for a company that wholeheartedly supports like my endeavors and the endeavors of everyone else on our team. They provide us the stability and the flexibility that we need.
Has it always been remote, or has it been?
It has always been remote. Even before the pandemic, it was remote. Before the pandemic, we had like a WeWork office in New York, and they would say, hey, if you can come in once or twice a week just to say hey to people, we'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
But now they're like, people have made huge life changes. Like, there's a few people that like don't live in the same city anymore from when it started, but we're, luckily our business model was pretty much built on work remote from the get-go. Cool. And so now I'm in a position where I have a job that is, I don't get to say, oh, I work at Bleacher Report, or, I work at, but
Barstool,
but I am kind of so happy having a job where I'm really able to dedicate most of my time and energy into comedy. And it really is just a job in that regard. Awesome. And my boss doesn't want it to be any more than that for us.
That's awesome. Yeah. So how did you then end up in Nashville if your job's remote and you could be anywhere?
So I ended up in Nashville for a few reasons. I lived in New York and I liked it. But it wasn't for me. I very much struggled there. It was too much. Like, I'm from Marietta, Georgia. And I went to school in Charleston. Like, I like walking around. I like small town, kind of like manageable, lot of stimulation in New York. I really liked New York, but I found myself just constantly exhausted.
Yes.
Constantly like just emotionally and spiritually depleted and physically depleted. And then I went to LA kind of the same thing. I like, you know, not as physically exhausting, but still just like spiritually depleting. And you know, I loved what I had and what we had in Charleston, South Carolina, when we were just comics going to dive bars, just trying to make people laugh, trying to build a scene, and just, you know, community, camaraderie, feeling like what you're doing really impacts, you know, the community. You go to New York or LA or whatever, it becomes about you, your career. And it's no longer kind of about creating these moments and stuff.
Right.
And so I'm from Georgia. I like Atlanta. Atlanta's a bit too big for me. It's too spread out. I don't want to be sitting in traffic. Like if I'm going to be sitting in traffic somewhere, I'll go to New York or LA, you know, like not Atlanta, you know? And so I love the South as well. And, you know, the comedians I know that decided to kind of base themselves out of Nashville, work out of here, have had nothing but great things to say about the opportunities here to not only get better as a comedian, but, you know, really monetize it in some capacity.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, my goal right now, I just turned 30 like 2 weeks ago. And at this point, I'm looking back and I'm like, you know what? My 20s were awesome. Like I have no regrets, and it was like exactly what kind of needed to happen. And I'm so glad that I was able to kind of get a few things out of my system and kind of see things in a certain light. So now as I go into my 30s, I'm very much like, okay, like I can now do things that I want to do, not do things that I think I have to do.
Yes.
You know, and so right now I want to take control. I want to take back the control. And me being in Nashville is me saying, listen, I want to, you know, maximize the amount of money I'm making from my day job and maximize the, you know, what that affords me with it being remote. You know, but I also want to get better at comedy, and I just want to monetize it however I can.
Yes, you are preaching.
Even if it is like an extra $100 a month on top of what I'm getting from my day job.
Yes.
Let's start there. And then let's go to $200 extra and let's go, you know, and being in Nashville has allowed me to really get a bit more experimental on stage, you know, get a bit more, you know, less concerned about, oh, I might say something that, ooh, you know, like I'm like kind of just trying to be, you know, I've been able to launch like a digital platform that I've been really thinking in the back of my head about for a long time. Being in Nashville gave me the space, the time, and then I met people that have been able to help me turn, you know, that into a reality. I call it show and tell. It's like a, you know, it's like a video podcast web series, kind of between two ferns type show, but I bring people on. We have a lazy Susan on the table in the middle of us with their show and tell item. And we do a show and tell, you know.
That's awesome.
You know, and it just, you know, but when I was in New York and LA, like maybe I had the idea, maybe it came up, but I would always get so overwhelmed with what it would take.
Right.
And is anyone willing to throw their resources at this for, you know, little to no compensation or, you know, and coming here is really, it's been great. It's been able to get me just back to saying, you know what, I'm going to be in control of my career. I'm not going to sit around and kind of wait to be asked to do a commercial that I don't really want to do. Not that there's anything wrong with that approach. I'm just like, I'm a control freak, and I feel like I just need to be in control, or else I feel out of control.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, man, everything you're saying just speaks. I turned 30 this year as well. And everything you're saying just speaks so hard when you're like, the 20s were for figuring it out. The 20s were fun. You could not pay me enough money to do it again, but they were fun. No regrets. Tired, exhausting, the grind, doing so much for free that you didn't know at the time you should be asking to be paid for. And I have noticed that Nashville compensates you more than any other place I've ever experienced. Like monetarily doing comedy, I've made so much more money since I've moved to Nashville than probably the last 2 years, like not even including the whole quarantine thing combined, doing comedy anywhere else, like Chicago, you know, New York. So I think that's pretty interesting too. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and I mean, and it's one of those things where, I mean, even just to produce a show, I mean, trying to produce a show and find a venue.
Yes.
I mean, I think the one time I really tried to produce a few shows in New York, and most of them went very well.
Right.
One, I lost so much money, it made me think about quitting comedy, quitting life, actually. Like, it was a moment where I was like, why am I doing this?
Yes, you know? And that's like the constant, even when your shows are going well, because like I produced a lot of shows in Chicago as well. And even when they're going well, even when they're very successful, even when they're well attended, they're costing you money.
Mm-hmm.
And
because, you know, like, and as a producer, we'll always break even before comics don't get paid.
Right.
We'll lose money.
Yes.
To make sure that whoever came to do the show gets paid, you know?
Yes.
So it's,
and that's one of the things I've noticed about here too, is from day one, it was, this pays this much, this pays this much, this pays this much, or like, sorry, this only pays $10, or sorry, this only pays $15. When in cities like Chicago or New York, you kind of feel like an asshole for asking if it pays. You just kind of expect that it's going to be free. And then when they hand you money at the end of the night, you're like, oh my God, thank you. Wow. And you just get so used to that when you do start actually making money for your time and your talents, you're like, oh. And then you start to calculate how much money that would have been if you had gotten paid for all the work you did in the past. And so I definitely feel like that's a 20s, 30s type thing, where that's an absolute goal, where it's like, the way that you put it, I thought was very relatable, where you're like, yes, I'm going to have this day job. Yes, I'm going to, you know, do whatever I can to turn, you know, that money into something that can help my career. But also my goal is to make whatever I can on top of that from comedy. And I feel like in a city like Nashville, that's actually possible. Like, that's actually a feasible dream. Which I think is very interesting. And kind of in that vein, in that 30s versus 20s, if you had to give a piece of advice to somebody who's just now getting started, maybe they're 21, 22, even 25 or 30, what would you tell a comedian that you wish somebody had told you in the very beginning?
Gosh.
Or if there's a few things, I imagine there's a few.
I mean, there are a few things, and it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like I have a different approach a bit, that maybe not. Like, I'm all about the long haul. I am all about this being a very, very long game.
Yes.
And I think that if you walk into this with a timeline for yourself that's somewhat realistic, that is the piece of advice. Always have a tangible goal. Always know what you're looking to do. Like with me, I want to host late night.
Yep.
That is my big goal. But when I first started doing comedy, I thought at 18, I thought I was ready. Like, I thought I was ready for it, to the point where I would email TV networks with my shitty 5 minutes from a dive bar.
Yes.
And say, listen, I'm ready. But even now, I'm looking at myself being like, I'm 30. I'm not a late night TV host. You know, like these things take time. These things take years, but you have to know what can you do along the way to get there, and what does success look like along the way, and know how to celebrate the milestones as you hit them. Because here's the thing.
The big picture would be so daunting without those small milestones along the way.
I could sit here and be mad right now and be like, man, I'm 30 and I'm not a late night host yet. Like, but I'm looking back and I'm like, well, I've kind of laid some groundwork. I did all this. Comedian. Number one. You met
Bryan Cranston.
Like, number one, I'm a comedian, right? Number two, I was interviewing celebrities on a TV show, and the interviews were consensual. People were vibing. There were, good energy. Okay, then TMZ asked me to go out to LA, and now I'm on camera a lot. pitching news stories and telling people the news. Now I'm not with them anymore, but I've now launched my own kind of like talk show platform, show and tell. So I am like, I'm doing it. Like I'm like, it's not that I'm not looking at myself like, I haven't done it. Like, no, like I am doing it. Like I am on the, so that's my piece of advice. And it's real easy for someone who got into comedy at 18 or someone who's 30 to say, you've got time. Don't be in a rush. Don't be in a rush. Like everyone's on their own timeline. And I don't know what someone else's situation is. Other people have a bit more urgency. I just very early on decided like, I want to be a sitcom dad. Like I want to, like, I don't want to make it in comedy until I am like a silver fox. Like, no, like I don't want to be
seen. That's true though. That's true. That's like
ready. Like I'm not, even as I'm talking to you right now, I don't feel ready to be seen. I feel like I'm a good comedian.
Right.
I feel like I am confident. I feel like I can have the set on the night on most shows that I do. And I feel like all comedians should have that mentality walking in. You know what I mean? Every comedian can think that way about themselves. But I also don't feel like I'm totally ready to be packaged yet and to be, and will I ever be? Maybe, but I just know that right now, like I'm not in any rush and I'm not mad about what I don't got because like you said, we're looking back and now it's all about like, I if anything, I feel grateful for like the awareness of so many things. And now I can put that awareness like into practice.
That's so, oh my gosh. Yes, that's so true. The awareness that comes with like 27, 28, 29, 30. And I feel like, honestly, the moment where I truly feel ready and I'm like the best and whatever, that's going to be a problem. I feel like I want to go my entire life always feeling unready for the opportunities that are being presented. Because one, that shows you that they're bigger and bigger opportunities. If you're getting more and more nervous about them being presented to you and you have that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Imposter syndrome almost, where you're like, they're going to find out that I'm not as good as they think. But I also think if you are in a place where you're the best one, you're in the wrong place and you need to find a place where you're no longer the best one, because then you can keep growing. And I feel like that comes with the awareness. Like it's fun to be the 18, 19-year-old who feels like, emailing NBC and telling them you're the next golden nugget they're going to find, and those make hilarious stories when you're 30 for sure. Which you can then turn around and monetize for comedy. But I definitely feel like that awareness and that imposter syndrome is so important to have. And I've taught at Second City for many years, and I've always noticed there's a pattern of the people who come in saying like, I don't know if I'm funny. I don't know if I'm meant to do this. I'm really nervous about this. I've never done anything like this. They end up being the most talented, the most driven, the most like hilarious students that I'll ever have. And the students that come in day one and think that they're just going to like mic drop and crush it, don't come back. Because they didn't plan for the contingency of you having constructive critique and feedback. They thought that you were going to just be floored and immediately be like, why are you in this class? You're so perfect. So that's, and I think also there is definitely some value in that idea where I feel like in any life change, whether it's working out or dieting or saving money or career goals, I feel like they always tell you to have that big end picture, but to also have the small goals on the way. Because like if you're trying to lose 150 pounds, every day you're going to be like, I still have 150 pounds to go. Oh my God. But if you're like 10 pounds, this month, 10 pounds next month, that is so much easier. And I feel the same way about comedy, where you're like, okay, this month I want to hit up 1 mic a week. Next month, I want to hit up 2 mics a week, and then the next thing you know, it's December and you're doing a mic every night. And then before you know it, you're being offered showcases and things like that. And it builds up over time so quickly though. So I definitely think there's a lot of value in that. If you had to give an honest opinion, if you had to just be real for a second, what is the worst part about stand-up and the best part about stand-up? Like, what sucks about stand-up to you?
Oh man, the worst part about stand-up, I would say, is like the overwhelming lack of professionalism.
Yes.
I
Yes.
the over across the board.
Yes.
And whether it's a club that's just not promoting properly, or you show up and the mic doesn't work, or comedians, male comedians sexually harassing female comics, or male comics, or just, like anything. I'm just
like literally just showing up late and looking like shit.
But still, it's like, if you show up, none of that matters. Right. Like, if you're just showing up, none of that matters.
Bare minimum.
So you can be the worst, but if you keep showing up, it's like you'll keep getting, it's like this weird, so that's the hard part for me. And when you do find people that are professional, you're like, oh my gosh. And it's almost like you never want to do comedy again. You just want to perform with them. It's like, it's almost like you want to remove yourself from comedy and just say, no, we're a traveling circus now.
Yep.
We're not even, we don't do comedy anymore. We're a show, and we're taking it, and we're secluding ourselves, And so I would say that's the hard part. The best part about comedy is, well, I'd say it's two things. I'd say it's one, there's nothing better than like connecting with somebody.
Yes.
I'm not even talking about making them laugh. Like, I'm just talking about the connection, I see you in me. Like, I connect. Like, I don't know, like this just, we just met, but we've known each other for years kind of vibe. So I love that, and how like it makes other people feel, but also how it makes me feel, because like we were talking about with imposter syndrome, like it takes a lot for me to get like up out of bed to go do comedy, because yes. I always feel like, why should I? Someone else on the lineup is going to be funnier than me.
Right.
Someone else on the lineup is going to be more driven than me. Someone else on the lineup is going to written a new joke, and yes. I haven't. All of this like kind of weird self-doubt, self-criticism, basically all the things our parents instilled in us growing up, come up. But when you get there, when you actually get there and you actually show up, you're like, man, what was I thinking back then? What was I thinking back there?
Yep.
So I don't know. Those are the two things I'd say that, to answer your question, it's those things.
Would you say, in a similar vein, what is the most negative impact and positive impact that stand-up has had on your life? Just kind of overall, if you had to pick.
Yeah. So negative impact would be the sacrifices that you make, and you're constantly removing yourself from family, friend, events.
So real. Oh my gosh. So real.
Most of the time, like the actual event that you're removing yourself for isn't worth it.
Yes.
But
somebody understands.
But you kind of keep telling yourself like, oh, it's going to be worth it in the long run. And it is. But the hardest part is like, usually it is that event that you went to and you left everything else for. Like, that event was usually kind of never worth it. The positive thing, though, is what I will say, is that I have seen miracles happen in comedy.
Oh my God. So many.
Like, through comedy is how I've really been able to see like miracles on earth. And through comedy, I'm a big, and this is probably a whole nother conversation, but I'm all big on like human beings knowing their ability to manipulate energy and to control their world, their environment. Like, we are not powerless. Like,
Right.
we are absolutely in control. And I have seen that in comedy through comedians creating a world that didn't exist before. You know what I mean? And again, it's like just making ways for themselves. It's like everyone's like, oh, I can't do it because there's this guy here. I can't. No, like, you can pave your own ways. And I don't know. So I would just say, like, through comedy, you know, some of the most miraculous things I've ever seen have, like, truly happened.
Yes. And I feel like one thing that I love and hate about comedy is even the people that you can't stand, like, even the people where they show up and you're just like, oh, this fucking guy, you know, they have such awesome stories. They have such a cool journey. I don't know anyone who's like, I woke up and just did stand up, like, and that was easy, and I've just been doing it ever since. Everybody's got a story. They've got a journey. They've got something. And if you just kind of listen to them talk about it, and they put down that, you know how some people have that permanent wall up where they're like, I'm just a comedian, like, I'm so cool, I'm so awesome, and you kind of have to talk to them for a while or get them really drunk in order to, like, lower that wall and just talk to them like a human being. I feel like a lot of comedians separate just being a person versus being a comedian. Everybody's just got such a unique story, and the fact that we all kind of form this camaraderie over this thing that we love, where it's like, even if we don't like each other, even if we got beef, right? Even if, like, they did that thing, like, in 2018, even if
we don't respect each other,
yes,
we still respect that you showed up. Like,
yes, yeah. Even if we
respect that, like, you showed up.
Right. Even if we don't respect each other, I feel like there's one, we are most of the time willing to admit when that person is talented. Like, even the people that make me the most insane, I'm like, yeah, but that was a good set.
Yeah.
And I know they're going to bring it home, so I'm going to keep booking them because I just, whatever. But so that's like the number one thing that I like, is that even with the drama, you know, that comes with, like, 20s doing stand-up, there's still that humanization. And like you said, when you watch somebody do what they love on stage, you gain this whole other respect for them. Even if you don't respect anything else about them, you gain this respect for them as a comic that just is such an amazing thing to experience and such an amazing thing to watch. And one of my favorite things about producing shows is watching someone, like, watching the crowd as they watch someone and watching them absorb this material for the first time and experience this person for the first time. And it's just awesome. It's just so cool. So it's like, despite everything else, like the beef, the dumb Facebook drama, the scene drama, the whatever is going on, just watching that moment is just priceless, no matter how you feel about the person on stage. And I just think it's like you said, it's like watching miracles happen, which I just think is awesome, is so good. Those were pretty much all the questions I had for you, but where can we find your content? Where can we see you? What have you got coming up?
Yeah, so I got a few things coming up. So, you know, I'm here in Nashville, so always producing stuff. You know, you can check me out on my website, Evan Berke, BERKE.com. I'm on the road a bit this month here, July 2021. I'm going to, I'm at Comedy Bar next week quite a bit. So actually, we pull up the calendar here.
Yeah, I think you're even on my show next week, or is that the week after?
July 12th at Comedy Bar, and then the 14th and the 15th also at Comedy Bar.
Nice.
And then the week after that, July 22nd through the 24th, I'll be in Auburn, Alabama, opening for Dusty Slay. And then the weekend after that, on Saturday, July 31st, we're doing one night at the Charleston Music Hall in Charleston, South Carolina. I'll be opening for Dusty Slay there as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I did launch a new
tell us about it.
Platform. It's called Show and Tell. It's exactly what it sounds like. We go in there, we tell them to bring an item. We try and kick it back to kindergarten a little bit. And you can find that on YouTube. I have a channel called Show and Tell, the YouTube channel. Got about 10 to 11 episodes there, trying to add as many more as we can coming up. But yeah, that's what
awesome.
That's what we've got going on.
Well, this was so fun. I learned, like, this went so much more wild than I expected, but I love it. I love this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and there are so many more stories off of all of the, like, we scratched the surface.
I know.
So much. that
yes, and as somebody who produces storytelling, I'm like intrigued. I'm like, I have like now I know.
Storytelling show. I really am.
Yep. Now, like, I am so intrigued. This did not go how I expected, but in the best way. The best way. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to the comedy industry, and good luck and break a leg these next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Of course, I will talk to you when I see you at Comedy Bar.
Sounds good.
Bye.